Hi team. Welcome to Additional Sheet. In this video we will go through top 50 multiple choice questions for CSS. You might notice the same questions being repeated. Please keep in mind that they were intentionally added to enhance your CSS knowledge. Question 1. What does CSS stand for? Options are A. Creative Style Sheets, B. Computer Style Sheets, C. Cascading Style Sheets, D. Colorful Style Sheets. The correct answer is option C. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, which is a style sheet language used for describing the presentation of a document written in HTML or XML. Q2. How can you include an external CSS file in an HTML document? Options are A. Style tag, B. Using link tag, C. Using CSS tag, and D. Using script tag. The correct answer is option B. The link element with the attributes rel equals stylesheet and href is used to include an external CSS file in an HTML document. Q3. Which property is used to change the text color in CSS? Options are A. Text color, B. Font color, C. Color, D. Text style. The correct answer is option C. The color property is used to set the color of the text in CSS. Small interruption, you can visit additionalsheet.com website and click on the quiz section to take multiple technical and non-technical courses quizzes and explore much more. Thank you. Let's resume our video. Q4. What does the box model in CSS consist of? Options are A. Margin, padding, border, content, B. Width, height, depth, C. Header, footer, sidebar, content, D. Float, clear, position, display. The correct answer is option A. The box model in CSS consists of margin, padding, border, and content, which define the dimensions of an element. Q5. How can you select an element with ID example in CSS? Options are A. Hashtag example, B. Dot example, C. Asterisk example, D. Dollar example. Correct answer is option A. In CSS, to select an element with a specific ID, you use the hashtag symbol followed by the ID name. Q6. What is the purpose of the float property in CSS? Options are A. It makes text bold, B. It positions an element to the left or right, allowing text and inline elements to wrap around it, C. It increases the font size of an element, D. It creates a border around an element. Correct answer is option B. The float property in CSS is used to specify whether an element should float to the left or right, allowing text and inline elements to wrap around it. Q7. Which CSS property is used to control the space between individual characters in a text? Options are A. Word spacing, B. Letter spacing, C. Line height, D. Textspacing. Correct answer is option B. The letter spacing property in CSS is used to control the space between characters in a text. Q8. What does the position, absolute, property value do in CSS? Options are A. Positions an element relative to its normal position in the document flow, B. Positions an element relative to its nearest positioned ancestor, C. Removes an element from the normal document flow, D. Makes an element visible. Correct answer is option C. The position, absolute, property removes an element from the normal document flow and positions it relative to its containing element. Q9. Which CSS pseudoclass is used to select and style an element when a user hovers over it? Options are A. Hover, B. Active, C. Focus, D. Visited. Correct answer is option A. The hover pseudoclass is used to select and style an element when a user hovers over it with the mouse. Q10. How can you center an element horizontally in CSS? Options are A. Text align, center. B. Marziehen, Zero Auto. C. Align, center. D. Float, center. Answer is option B. Setting margin, Zero Auto, on an element style centers it horizontally by distributing equal margins on the left and right sides. Q11. Which CSS property is used to control the space between lines of text within an element? Options are A. Text spacing. B. Line height. C. Space between. D. Vertikalen. Correct answer is option B. The line height property in CSS is used to control the space between lines of text within an element. Q12. What does the box sizing, border box, property value do in CSS? Options are A. Includes only the content when calculating the width of an element. B. Includes content, padding, and border when calculating the width of an element. C. Includes only the padding when calculating the width of an element. D. Includes only the border when calculating the width of an element. Correct answer is option B. The box sizing, border box, property value includes the content, padding, and border when calculating the width of an element. Q13. What is the purpose of the z-index property in CSS? Options are A. It sets the opacity of an element. B. It controls the stacking order of elements with the same position. C. It defines the rotation of an element. D. It changes the font size of an element. Correct answer is option B. The z-index property in CSS is used to control the stacking order of elements with the same position. Q14. Which CSS property is used to create rounded corners on an element? Options are A. Border radius. B. Corner radius. C. Round corner. D. Border style. Correct answer is option B. The border radius property in CSS is used to create rounded corners on an element. Q15. What is the purpose of the media query in CSS? Options are A. It queries the user's browser history. B. It allows the use of media files in the style sheet. C. It applies styles based on the characteristics of the device displaying the page. D. It queries the server for additional styles. Correct answer is option C. Media queries in CSS allow the application of styles based on the characteristics of the device, such as screen size, resolution, and orientation. Q16. Which CSS property is used to set the background color of an element? Options are A. Background color. B. Color background. C. Background style. D. Element color. Correct answer is option A. The background color property in CSS is used to set the background color of an element. Q17. How can you select all paragraphs within a div element using CSS? Options are A. Div p. B. Div greater than p. C. Div plus p. D. Div_p. Correct answer is option A. The selector div_p selects all p elements that are descendants of a div element. Q18. What is the purpose of the opacity property in CSS? Options are A. It controls the transparency of an element. B. It changes the font weight of an element. C. It adjusts the brightness of an element. D. It sets the shadow of an element. Correct answer is option A. The opacity property in CSS is used to control the transparency of an element. Q19. Which CSS property is used to control the order of flex items in a flex container? Options are A. Flex order. B. Order. C. Flex direction. D. Flex direction. Correct answer is option B. The order property in CSS is used to control the order of flex items in a flex container. Q20. What does the display none property value do in CSS? Options are: A. It hides an element without affecting the layout. B. It changes the display style to inline. C. It makes an element visible. D. It increases the element size. Correct answer is option A. The display none property value in CSS hides an element without affecting the layout. Q21. What does the position relative property value do in CSS? Options are: A. Positions an element relative to its normal position in the document flow. B. Positions an element relative to its nearest positioned ancestor. C. Removes an element from the normal document flow. D. Makes an element visible. Correct answer is option A. The position relative property value positions an element relative to its normal position in the document flow. Q22. Which CSS property is used to set the style of the cursor when it hovers over an element? Options are: A. Cursor style. B. Cursor hover. C. Cursor. D. Over style. Correct answer is option C. The cursor property in CSS is used to set the style of the cursor when it hovers over an element. Q23. What does the font weight property control in CSS? Options are: A. Font size. B. Font color. C. Font style. D. Thickness of the font characters. Correct answer is option D. The font weight property in CSS controls the thickness of the font characters, determining whether they are bold or normal. Q24. How can you select every second row in a table using CSS? Options are: A. Tr child, even. B. Tr child, odd. C. Tr second row. D. Tr second row. Correct answer is option A. The tr child, even, selector in CSS is used to select every second row in a table. Q25. What is the purpose of the max width property in CSS? Options are: A. It sets the maximum font size of an element. B. It limits the maximum width of an element. C. It adjusts the maximum height of an element. D. It controls the maximum margin of an element. Correct answer is option B. The max width property in CSS limits the maximum width of an element. Q26. Which CSS property is used to create a shadow effect on text? Options are: A. Text shadow. B. Shadow text. C. Shadow text. D. Shadow effect. Correct answer is option A. The text shadow property in CSS is used to create a shadow effect on text. Q27. What does the transition property in CSS allow you to do? Options A. A. It controls the timing of animations. B. It sets the transition color of an element. C. It transforms the shape of an element. D. It toggles between two styles. Correct answer is option A. The transition property in CSS allows you to control the timing of animations. Q28. Which CSS pseudo-element is used to select the first letter of a block element? Options are: A. First letter. B. Initial letter. C. Initial letter. D. Letter first. Correct answer is option A. The first letter pseudo-element in CSS is used to select the first letter of a block element. Q29. How can you apply styles to a visited link using CSS? Options are: A. Visited. B. Link. C. Hover. D. Active. Correct answer is option A. The visited selector in CSS is used to apply styles to a visited link. Q30. What is the purpose of the outline property in CSS? Options are: A. It sets the outer margin of an element. B. It creates a border around an element. C. It draws a line around the outside of an element. D. It sets the outline color of an element. Correct answer is option C. The outline property in CSS draws a line around the outside of an element. Q31. What does the flex grow property control in CSS? Options are: A. It sets the order of flex items. B. It defines the flex container's main axis. C. It controls the ability of a flex item to grow. D. It adjusts the space between flex items. Correct answer is option C. The flex grow property in CSS controls the ability of a flex item to grow within a flex container. Q32. Which CSS property is used to add shadows to the borders of an element? Options are: A. Border shadow. B. Shadow. C. Border style. D. Box shadow. Correct answer is option D. The box shadow property in CSS is used to add shadows to the borders of an element. Q33. What does the transition timing function property specify in CSS? Options are: A. It defines the duration of a transition effect. B. It sets the starting point of a transition effect. C. It specifies the speed curve of a transition effect. D. It determines the ending state of a transition effect. Correct answer is option C. The transition timing function property in CSS specifies the speed curve of a transition effect. Q34. How can you select all direct child elements of a parent in CSS? Options are: A. Parent greater than child. B. Parent child. C. Parent plus child. D. Parent is similar to child. Correct answer is option A. The parent is greater than child selector in CSS selects all direct child elements of a parent element. Q35. What is the purpose of the counter increment property in CSS? Options are: A. It increments the font size of an element. B. It increases the counter for an element. C. It sets the initial value of a counter. D. It counts the number of child elements. Correct answer is option B. The counter increment property in CSS increases the counter for an element. Q36. Which CSS property is used to create a flexible box layout model? Options are: A. Float. B. Display flex. C. Position relative. D. Align items. Correct answer is option B. The display flex property in CSS is used to create a flexible box layout model. Q37. What does the content property in CSS apply to? Options are: A. It sets the content of an HTML page. B. It defines the content of a pseudo-element. C. It adjusts the content area of an element. D. It changes the content of a hyperlink. Correct answer is option B. The content property in CSS defines the content of a pseudo-element. Q38. How can you make a background image not repeat in CSS? Options are: A. Background repeat, none. B. Background repeat, no repeat. C. Background no repeat, true. D. Background, no repeat. Correct answer is option B. The background repeat, no repeat property in CSS makes a background image not repeat. Q39. What is the purpose of the resize property in CSS? Options are: A. It adjusts the size of an element's padding. B. It resizes an image within an element. C. It allows users to resize an element's width and height. D. It changes the font size dynamically. Correct answer is option C. The resize property in CSS allows users to resize an element's width and height. Q40. Which CSS unit represents a percentage of the viewport width? Options are: A. VW. B. VH. C. Percentile W. D. VP. Correct answer is option A. The VW unit in CSS represents a percentage of the viewport width. Q41. What does the object fit property in CSS control? Options are: A. Text fitting within an element. B. The fit of an image or video within its box. C. The spacing between flex items. D. The spacing between flex items. Correct answer is option B. The object fit property in CSS controls how an image or video should be resized to fit its box. Q42. How can you select all elements with a class named example in CSS? Options are A. Example. B. Example. C. Example. D. Element.example. Correct answer is option A. The selector.example in CSS selects all elements with the class name example. Q43. What does the flex shrink property in CSS determine? Options are A. The ability of a flex item to shrink. B. The order of flex items. C. The size of the flex container. D. The ability of a flex item to grow. Correct answer is option A. The flex shrink property in CSS determines the ability of a flex item to shrink if necessary. Q44. Which CSS property is used to set the background image for an element? Options are A. Image. B. Background image. C. IMG background. D. Background URL. Correct answer is option B. The background image property in CSS is used to set the background image for an element. Q45. What is the purpose of the pointer events property in CSS? Options are A. It controls the visibility of the cursor. B. It determines the shape of the cursor. C. It specifies whether an element can be the target for pointer events. D. It sets the position of the cursor. Correct answer is option C. The pointer events property in CSS specifies whether an element can be the target for pointer events. Q46. How can you apply styles to an element when a user clicks on it using CSS? Options are A. Hover. B. Active. C. Focus. D. Click. Correct answer is option B. The active pseudoclass in CSS is used to apply styles to an element when it is being activated, typically when a user. Q47. Which CSS property is used to create a border image for an element? Options are A. Border image source. B. Border image URL. C. Border source. D. Border URL. Correct answer is option A. The border image source property in CSS is used to set the source of the border image for an element. Q48. What does the visibility hidden property value do in CSS? Options are A. It makes an element invisible without affecting the layout. B. It hides an element and collapses the space it occupies. C. It changes the visibility of child elements. D. It toggles the visibility of the element. Correct answer is option B. The visibility hidden property value in CSS hides an element and collapses the space it occupies. Q49. How can you select an element with both class example and class highlight in CSS? Options are A. Example.highlight. B. Example.highlight. C. Example, highlight. And D. Example space highlight. Correct answer is option A. The selector.example.highlight in CSS selects an element with both class example and class highlight. Q50. Which CSS property is used to create a rotating animation? Options are A. Animation type. B. Transform. C. Rotate animation. D. Animation rotate. Correct answer is option B. The transform property in CSS, when combined with the rotate function, is used to create a rotating animation. Thank you very much. Please visit additionalsheet.com website for real-time exercise and examples.